Then there's California, a podcast featuring members of the California State Senate Democratic Caucus in conversation about their lives, their legislative priorities, policies, and other related issues that help make California exceptional. From the state capitol in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. It's been a privilege over the course of the last 3 years of this podcast duration to be able to spend time and conversation with Senate lawmakers who represent California's Central Valley, discussing the economic, health, environmental, and social trials confronting the communities in the center section of our state. And the trials confronting the Valley in the late summer of 2021 are many. COVID, health, and workplace inequities, drought impact, the lack of affordable, clean, accessible water for crops and humans, food insecurity, all of which seem to disproportionately impact the most vulnerable of the Valley's families and farms and workers. There are many advocates who consider it their mission to help the Valley and its residents cope with these struggles. Not only Valley legislative leaders, but also impassioned local activists, including young people who are compelled by their own personal experiences and the struggles of those around them to take leadership during this difficult time, to advocate on behalf of their families and their friends and their fellow community members. On this edition of Then There's California, we are proud to reunite, sooner than later, with one of the Central Valley's noted lawmakers, a Valley native, and we'll also talk to another Valley native who, as she comes of age, is already refining and defining her future as a leader, deeply passionate about her Valley, compelled to come to the aid of not only her community, but also her country. Listeners of this podcast are certainly no strangers to Senator Melissa Hurtado from the Valley, served in local government in the Valley, and since being elected to the state Senate in 2018, has worked across party lines to ensure rural voices are heard at all levels of government on all of those aforementioned policy issues. And how appropriate that she's also the chair of the Senate Human Services Committee. Senator Melissa Hurtado, good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just finished up a press conference on one of our top priorities in the Senate district, SB 559. It's been a busy day, an exciting one, but I'm happy to be here with you again and, of course, to be joined by Isabella.
Absolutely. And joining Senator Hurtado is 17-year-old Isabella Vasquez. She is from the community of Tulare and is a rising senior at San Joaquin Memorial High School in Fresno. Isabella has already done so much work in her communities to support agricultural workers and their families and helping her teen peers address mental health issues that have arisen in the midst of the COVID pandemic. Isabella came today to the Capitol to, well, I was going to say shadow, but maybe a better way to say it would be to stand with Senator Hurtado as she moves through legislative committees, juggles her bills, promotes her legislation and policy. And Isabella is getting a right behind the dais slice of life view of a state lawmaker's daily routine. Isabella Vasquez, thank you for joining us on Then There's California, and welcome to the Capitol.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Have you been to the Capitol before? Is this your first time here?
I have been to the Capitol before, once with my parents, but other than that, no.
Probably not in this capacity where you were so directly involved and in doing things with the state senator, right?
No, definitely not. I'm really grateful to be here.
What did you do today?
So today, when I got here, I went with Senator Hurtado to go and watch her do her press conference, and it was truly an amazing experience to go watch her advocate for the location that I love so dearly and I hold so dearly to my heart, and to hear everyone tell their stories.
So what do you think, Isabella, then, after what you've seen today, about the work and the life of a state lawmaker, a state senator? Does it light a fire under you?
It definitely does. I have still been very confused on what I want to do ahead in the future. I know I want to go into either law or politics, but I feel like this is really pushing me more towards politics as I get to see Senator Hurtado advocate for something that is so important.
You and Senator Hurtado are not strangers. You live in her district, I assume, but you've partnered with her on projects in the past. So this wasn't just a first-time meeting today, right?
No, we have partnered together in the past. Isabella reached out one day and said, I want to help our community. How can I help? And together we joined forces and raised some funds to provide scholarships to the children of farm workers. And that's something that she wanted to do. She worked in the fields over the summer to raise money to provide scholarships to students or children of farm workers. And I thought it was very noble of her to do that, and obviously she has a bit of a history in agriculture.
Well, you found her approachable, and sounds like she was eager and enthusiastic to have your alliance with this.
Most definitely. Senator Hurtado has been so amazing to my family and I genuinely appreciate how willing she is to listen to what my cousin and I have to say, especially because we are minors. Some people may not take us as seriously, but she genuinely listens to our concerns, which I feel is extremely important.
I would suggest that you and Senator Hurtado probably have a lot in common. Your lives growing up in the Valley, which has created a lot of love and compassion for the Valley that you live in, which has encouraged you at a young age to become an advocate and an ambassador for it. And you ultimately want to take your advocacy to a higher level. Is that right? I mean, do you see a little bit of yourself in Senator Hurtado?
Most definitely. I really hope that I can work my way to at least somewhere near where she is at now.
And Senator Hurtado, Isabella, and please take this as a compliment, she's not that far behind you in terms of her path in life and her advocacy. Do you see something of a mirror image of yourself in high school looking at Isabella?
Absolutely. You know, when I was younger, I was very eager and cared deeply about my community, and sometimes I didn't know necessarily what I was getting myself into, but my heart always led me into some project or another, or making one connection or another, and eventually it led me to where I am today. And so I see that same person in Isabella, that she's very eager, always contacting and reaching out and eager to do more for her community. And you know, to me, I think that our youth, as she mentioned, often get left behind in policy decisions and important policy decisions. And I think it's very important for our youth to have a voice in these matters, in all matters. And so I wanted to include her to have more of a voice here in the state capitol, and definitely on our policy decisions, but also for people to get to know a little bit more about the Central Valley and the youth of the Central Valley. So
she really can be an ambassador of the Central Valley with the knowledge that she gains from you and hanging around out here at the Capitol.
That's right.
Senator Hurtado, were you in high school pretty active in an advocacy role or speaking out on issues?
A little bit. So I was part of the Upward Bound program. I joined, I think it was my sophomore year in high school, and that's really what kind of got me engaged and interested in politics. I took a trip one day to Sacramento to visit local college campuses, because the program is made for students who are first generation, and being a daughter of immigrants, no one before me had ever graduated from high school and or gone to college and or graduated from college. So as being part of this program, I came and did a tour, and we got to visit UC Davis and Cal State Sacramento. And at that time when we came, we did a rally because there was efforts to eliminate parts of the program. And so they had us go and collect signatures back at home and write letters to Congress. And then they brought us up to Sacramento and we did the rally. And so when we did the rally, I got the sense of hope from being here and advocating for myself and other students like myself. And I was just, 16 years old. Wow. And it was at that moment that I said, I want to come to Sacramento to study at Cal State Sacramento and study political science to make a difference in the lives of people, but never did I imagine that I would end up being a state senator.
That's wonderful to hear that part of your life journey. So, Isabella, I shared a bit of top-line info about your bio, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and your family. Your parents were farm workers and your grandparents as well.
Yes. So I was born in Bakersfield. I live in Tulare. I attend school in Fresno, and I grew up in McFarland and Delano. So I'm a pretty good representation of the Central Valley overall. Both of my parents worked in agriculture at younger ages, and both of my grandparents as well. So I have definitely grown up with this agriculture background instilled in me.
And do you have siblings as well?
No, I'm an only child.
But you said you have a cousin that you seem to be an ally with in a lot of your work, right?
Yes, my cousin and I are actually 13 days apart, so we're like twins. Yes. So it works out perfectly, but he's amazing. He also went out, did work in the fields, went out in the scorching heat, and He's an amazing kid.
It sounds like your aspirations and your goals and your hard work that you have done in your young life here already in high school is in tribute. It's in honor of your family. Does their hard work and sacrifice really inspire you?
Most definitely. I hear stories of the struggles that sometimes they went through. So when given the opportunity, I try to give back to my community because I figured if my parents or my grandparents would have had that help, it would have greatly benefited them. So I want to try and help people that need that.
So they're kind of your heroes, too, in a lot of ways.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Senator Hurtado, there's another thing in common. Your family, your parents were farm workers.
Yeah, both of my parents started off as farm workers, and then they ended up working in the livestock industry, poultry plants, and so I know I got to see them when they walked in the doors with sweat, on their forehead, and just how much they sacrificed to provide for me and for my siblings, a shot at a better life. And they worked long hours, and I really appreciate their sacrifice. And going back to Isabella, I saw that in her as well, that she really appreciated and valued the sacrifices of those loved ones that they made on our behalf, and wanted to give back, and always remembering where we came from, because that's what we're told, right? Don't forget where you came from. Mm-hmm. Always remember where you came from and give back. And I saw that in her, and wanting to give back to those that always provide for us.
Isabella, we have heard so many stories, and I know you're familiar with them too, about how COVID has disproportionately affected families and workers in the Central Valley. How is your family doing? Has your family survived and handled the COVID process okay?
Luckily, my family is doing okay with COVID. A few of us did catch COVID, unfortunately, but we're all okay now. In terms of the agriculture business, it was a little tough at first, especially it was hard to do business, especially because of fear with COVID. If it was how it was transported, no one really knew at the time. But luckily, everything's been figured out.
People that were considered essential workers, a lot of the workers in the valley, right from the start, they had no choice but to keep working. In the factories and the fields, very close to each other in proximity. And they had to do that sometimes just to keep their job or just to keep the food on the table. Have you seen that? And do you feel like Valley residents, particularly the farm workers, the agricultural workers, that they're not treated in general fairly? Not to mention the pandemic, but just in general. Are you seeing that disparity yourself?
Oh, for sure. You can definitely see the disparity. It's definitely difficult to watch these people out here in the heat with masks. They're not social distance, and I wish people would understand that more, especially when, you see food on the table, you see grapes, and many people just eat them and enjoy them. But when I see food on the table, I see the hands that have touched them, that have transported them to me, which I think is especially imperative during COVID-19, that they're still out there in a way risking their lives so that we can eat.
So agriculture workers are a key advocacy and assistance priority to you. You talked about how you and Senator Hurtado have partnered in some ways. What other ways are you helping the farm workers in the valley?
So I have also worked with the Bautista Foundation in Navidad en el Barrio, which is when we come together during Christmas time and we collect toys. And these toys are mainly targeted for children of farm workers, but children who may not have the opportunity to receive toys from any background or not turned away ever. So that's another way that I try and participate in helping farm workers.
So I'm going to ask you to put your legislative policy hat on here. Senator Hurtado is helping farm workers in California by creating a pilot program that would create a universal basic income for farm workers, which would be a reward and a thank you for their hard work, but can also sustain them going forward at times when they are unemployed or underemployed or dealing with health issues. So a way that the state can help them maintain their livelihood. And UBI, as you may have heard, is already becoming more of a conversation all over the state, and some communities are already adopting it. Senator Hurtado has already been a success with doing that for farm workers. So what do you think of that? Do you agree with that, particularly a UBI for farm workers?
Oh, I most definitely agree. It's especially hard now during COVID-19, so I believe that having that baseline salary that she is discussing, it would be very beneficial not only for the farm workers but also for their families and helping them provide.
Future senator.
Yes, future senator.
Yes,
so, Senator Hurtado, tell us, the budget's been signed into law. You were pretty successful with this policy. You went to the governor and said, we need to do this for the farm workers in my district.
Well, I advocated to make sure that the dollars were also could go to farm workers. Now, the program itself, the funding was allocated in the budget, but the program is really up to the counties that are willing to take up the program and come up with the program in itself. And so now the responsibility relies on the counties to take up such a program for farm workers.
Well, Isabella, tell us about being an incoming senior at San Joaquin Memorial High. Are you excited about being a top class member this year?
I am excited, a little nervous. I'm sad to leave Memorial. I would say it's my second home, my second family, but I'm excited to see what the future holds. I'm unsure of where I want to go to college. I don't know. I kind of want to go to the East Coast, but I'm also an extremely family-oriented person, and the Valley is my roots, so I might stay in California.
Well, I know this is literally the third school year that is about to be impacted and has been impacted by the pandemic and COVID. Was it hard for you and your classmates this last year or so? I assume being on Zoom and not being in each other's company, not being on campus. What's it like to deal with school nowadays and be able to go to school now?
It was definitely extremely difficult on my classmates and I, and especially the bulk of it happened for our junior year, which is known as being the toughest year in high school. So we really had to rely on each other for support and to gain help from each other. But now walking into school, I'm so glad that we can go in person, even if we have to wear masks. That's completely okay. Now we can physically see the teacher, see what's being written on the board, which I feel is extremely crucial when learning.
And Lord willing, you may actually be able to have a graduation ceremony come next spring.
Yes, hopefully.
Well, we've talked a lot here in the legislature, and I know it has been a true issue in the Valley about access to internet and broadband issues. Was that a challenge for you and your classmates this last year?
Luckily, I have not had any issues with that.
But I know, Senator, you have seen that firsthand, too, and you've been part of the partnership here in the legislature this last year, Access for All with the internet down in the Valley.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's one place in the state of California that I think significantly needs greater access to broadband, it's the Central Valley. It's the rural communities across the state of California. Obviously, we need to make progress across the entire state, but I think that there's still a lot of room for improvement in the Central Valley, and I've been supportive of the measures in the budget that allocated funding for expanding broadband, and I think it will be a great benefit to our region.
Have you heard those stories, I assume, Isabella, even though it didn't affect you directly, of the students that couldn't get access? You probably heard that story from a year or so ago with the two young girls at Taco Bell who had to go sit at the drive-thru because that was the only place they could get internet access?
No, yes, for sure. I have some family in McFarland and Delano, and those aren't necessarily the most city areas, so they have had some difficulty accessing the internet. So I'm really grateful for Senator Hurtado and doing her work on that.
Are you the exception to the rule when it comes to leadership amongst your peers? Are they as involved in caring about the Valley as you are?
I would love to take a lot of credit, but many of my friends are also involved. We recently all hosted a community service project for Sanger, Hope Sanger, in which we helped people from impoverished communities, and we got the whole school involved in donating cans, which I thought was an amazing project. So a lot of my friends do like being involved, and we're all so passionate about where we're from and our roots.
You had mentioned just a moment ago that sometimes you find it a challenge for people to take you seriously. How do you deal with that? How do you wipe away the cynicism or the attitude, well, she's young, she's in high school, and have them take you and your opinions and your philosophies and your advocacy at face value?
I believe confidence is key in that when you're talking and you're discussing what you're passionate about, it's important to be confident because other people can sense that. So when you are confident, others will take you more seriously, and that's kind of how I go around it. And if they don't take me seriously, I just wipe it off, and I know what I firmly believe in, and I know that it's important to me, and that's all that matters.
What do you think are the key ingredients to being a leader as you are becoming one and already are one? Communication, creative thinking, spontaneity, what do you think?
I think confidence, and I also think being creative, as you mentioned. It's important to not just follow what others say or what others tell you to do, but also to be able to think outside of the box and create your own ways of doing things, because maybe you'll find a shortcut.
Sounds a lot like me.
Yes. Well, Senator Hurtado, when we talked in July, you had mentioned how very much it is important for you, for the people of the Valley, to give you feedback. You want to hear from them. You appreciate, you feed on, if you will, their inspiration. Do you see that support and that inspiration in Isabella?
Absolutely, in Isabella and many others across the region. And if you could tell Brian, from getting to know me over the last couple of years and just having this conversation with Isabella today, I mean, the Central Valley, our spirits are very much alike, and we're very passionate about helping others, and sometimes it's real hard to people to take us seriously on different issues and matters, but we continue to push forward and find creative ways to make our case, and never giving up and always continuing to move forward.
You just brought up something I thought was an interesting challenge. Even now, in your capacity as a senator representing the Valley and its people, your families, your communities, still trying to get people to take you seriously.
I still struggle with that, even as a state senator, especially being the youngest state senator in the legislature and being the youngest woman ever elected to the California State Senate. I still feel that. But I have to let it go and continue to move forward and try to express as much confidence as possible in the things that I feel passionate about, and that's the people that I represent.
Do you feel compelled, Isabella, in your role as a Valley leader, and we'll call you that, a Valley leader already, who Senator Hurtado depends on for inspiration and feedback and comment and response?
I think it's awesome that she's including people such as myself, you know, having a younger perspective. And not only that, but I'm also a Latina, which I feel like is a great representation of the Central Valley. There are a lot of us that aren't taken seriously, unfortunately, but I feel that we have strong opinions that are important, and we do have good ideas.
You mentioned something that makes me want to ask. You've probably heard the news over the last couple of weeks about the 2020 census, and for the first time in really history in America and the United States, white people are no longer in the majority, that it's now communities of color, including Latinos. Does that fill you with hope? Does that give you maybe some open doors to further bring your voice out and be heard and taken seriously?
Yes, it definitely gives me hope, and it also makes me proud to be a part of this community. I feel that us Latinos are extremely strong in what we believe in, and we have been pushed down for many generations, so I'm glad that our voices are finally being heard.
I know your voice is being heard in another lead role in addressing another crisis, and that is the mental health issues in the Valley, particularly the problem of suicide, in particular teen suicide. And I really can't imagine right now trying to be a young person, being a student, and dealing with just the normal teen stresses of life, but you then add on the challenges of the pandemic, social isolation, climate change, the impact of social unrest, seeing still here in 2021 inherent racism in a lot of policies and attitudes and issues that come up. So young people like yourself are vulnerable, they face a lot of stressors. How does this and life here in circa 2021 affecting your friends and your family right now? And what are you doing to help?
It's extremely hard right now, especially to listen to your own peers struggle. I've been having a lot of conversation with my friends, and it's really sad to hear how this isolation has been impacting them and all of us. And I just really hope that we can start a conversation so that teenagers can hear that they aren't alone and that they're not the only ones going through these struggles, and that they're completely normal right now, unfortunately.
Mental health, particularly with our youth, has been an issue long before the pandemic, particularly in rural communities. The numbers have shown that we need to start having serious conversations about how to address it, particularly in our youth. My first year in the legislature, I sponsored a bill to help with teen suicide prevention. Unfortunately, that bill died, but it was near and dear to my heart knowing that I have come across youth who've committed suicide in my own hometown, and I know that that's been the case throughout the Central Valley. So it's a serious issue in our young communities.
A question I want to ask you, Isabella, how do you reach out? How do you offer support to your peers who are dealing with mental health issues? And even yourself, how do you heal?
As simple as this may sound, anytime I come across a post on Instagram that I feel that can be inspirational or that can comfort someone in some sort of way, I try and repost it. So I'm constantly trying to raise awareness, even if I don't have the largest following on social media. Any person that I can reach or anyone who can view that, I feel that it's essential so that they know that they aren't alone and there can be some sort of comfort in that.
To that point, do you watch for the social posts of your friends and peers and look for triggers or look for signs of something that's going on with them that you have the knowledge and comfort level to reach out and help them on?
Most definitely, even if I'm not that close with the person, but I see that they're struggling or maybe we aren't as good as friends anymore, I try to, as they call it, swipe up on their story or try to DM them, checking up on them, saying, hey, are you okay? Even if it might be quote unquote awkward because we aren't friends anymore, I still genuinely care about all those people.
That's very generous. You're probably saving lives and very least touching lives too. So Senator Hurtado has been dealing with today and this past legislative year some really profound policy issues like water access, drought relief, food insecurity, subsidence in the Kern Canal, all detailed and complicated, but they will affect, really, almost to a person, so many people in the Valley. So have you and your fellow students been following these issues, not just directly Senator Hurtado's bills, but these issues as they circulate in the Valley?
I most certainly have. It's really interesting. I follow Senator Hurtado on Instagram, so I try to keep updated with everything she's doing, and I think it's absolutely amazing, especially the water bill. Us Central Valley kids really see the consequences of it because most of our families are in agriculture, the dairy industry, so we genuinely appreciate the work she's doing to help us out.
That must be inspiring and reassuring to you, right, Senator?
Yes, I mean, like I tell everybody, water in the Valley is... When you talk about water for agriculture, there's a lot of people and lives and families that are behind that. Stories of people that you don't know and the impacts to people and communities that we just are not aware of. There's just major consequences when there isn't enough water going to communities and or to our agricultural businesses. And so it's a reminder. It's for us all.
Let's do a legislative status check while we have you here on your bills. Your bill, SB 559, which would bring the $300+ million to pay for subsidence repairs to the Kern Canal, passed out of Assembly Appropriations, correct?
It passed out of Assembly Appropriations with amendments. And so we're still analyzing those amendments, trying to figure out if they're good or they're bad, but we're hoping that they're good, and so we can, continue to move forward with it.
In theory, moving back to the Senate for the final approval and then to the governor's desk. And then you also have here in the final weeks of the 2021 session, as we speak, your other bills dealing with food insecurity and drought. And give us a top-line status of how things are looking with your Valley legislative package.
Well, overall, we didn't do too bad. We secured a lot of funding for different communities all across the Senate district, from a fire training facility for the city of Fresno that will benefit the entire region. But particularly around our legislative package, we had, I think, 6 out of the 9 bills come out of committee.
That's great.
That's really good. And of course, SB 559, like I said, we're analyzing to make sure that it's the amendments added are positive ones. The other food bill that I had, SB 108, the human right to food, was held in committee. So I'm a little sad about that one because I think that there's a lot of food insecurity issues that we have.
And no time to waste on these.
And no time to waste. The climate is, against us at the moment. And the impacts, the potential food shortages that we'll begin to see. I mean, we got to be prepared for that kind of thing. We got to know what the meals and the appetites look like here in the state of California. And SB 108 was really aiming at that and trying to really secure and solidify food security for all Californians. SB 464, of course, which is the other bill that I had, Food for All, which would allow those who don't have legal status in the country have access to programs like CalFresh to be food secure. That bill got some funding, but obviously it's a 2-year bill. So there's some success, some unfortunate losses, but regardless, we'll continue to move forward.
Obviously, sometimes you do have to work incrementally. Luckily, it's the first year of a 2-year session, so like you say, you can come back in January and pick up where you left off on a few of these other bills, too.
And in the Valley, we never give up. We
That's
always
right.
come back.
That's right. See, so you've got the Valley support and the Valley enthusiasm. Isabella, as we wrap this, you have been so gracious with your time and your answers here. Let's talk about the future, which we've touched on a little bit. You're a little undecided about the future. That's okay. That's normal. So you're graduating from high school next year. what is ahead for you? You want to go to a four-year university, you thinking about the East Coast, but you want to stay here closer to family. I know that you're weighing all of that. Any other schools you're looking at in particular, even here on the West Coast?
In terms of specific schools, not really. I'm looking more at schools that are more politically involved. So, for example, on the East Coast, like Georgetown, that is in Washington, D.C., which I feel like would be a great way to connect with other people in politics. But also we have great schools here in California, like Sac State, that are also really well connected politically. But I do hope to, after I graduate the four-year university, to go into a field that I'm truly passionate about and earn a PhD in that field. I really want to use my education to help others. I know not everyone has the opportunity or is blessed with the opportunity to be educated. So if I can continue to get educated, I will do so and use it hopefully to help others like Senator Hurtado has.
I just saw this last week a Washington Post poll that came out, and I knew we were going to be talking to you today, so I thought of you when I saw it. And it's a poll of U.S. teens, ages 14 to 18, just about life circa 2021, and the poll essentially noted that even though American teens are so weary and tired of the turmoil and inequality and the division that besets us as a country, many of them saying it's actually a bad time to be growing up. So you may or may not agree with that. They still have faith in the future. 9 out of 10 of these teens said that they anticipate their futures will be fruitful and satisfying, and they'll still have opportunities to succeed in life, and maybe even a better life than their parents had, which is what every parent wants. So it's okay to be able to say that and hope for that. Do those poll numbers reflect or sync up with what you feel and your peers and your friends think about today and the future?
I believe that we all hold hope in our souls and in our hearts, and we trust these policymakers, these lawmakers, our senators, people who represent our state. So I think that as long as we have hope and we are all in it for the right reasons, we're going to be doing better.
What words would you have, or what would you want to say to Senator Hurtado, just where you are in your life and looking ahead at your own future, possibly a career in politics, possibly in law, whatever it might be, to somebody who's, again, not that far ahead of you, but has definitely established herself as a voice for the Valley and as a distinguished lawmaker here?
I just want to say on behalf of the Central Valley, we're extremely grateful for you and everything you have done for us and your advocacy for all of these necessary policies. The Central Valley tends to get lost a lot, unfortunately, even though we do provide so much for not only the state, but for our nation. So we genuinely appreciate you. And I want to say thank you so much for being an amazing mentor to me. It truly means a lot, and I really do look up to you.
Well, thank you for the kind words. What I want to tell you and a lot of the other young women that are listening to this podcast is that along the way you'll have a lot of challenges, and you'll have people tell you, no, you can't. And my word of advice is don't listen. Continue to follow your heart, and your heart's always going to lead you in the right direction and doing the right thing for people. And I know that you'll accomplish great things.
Thank you.
You are an extraordinary soul, Isabel, and I can tell that just from the 30 minutes of knowing you. I can literally see you someday following in the footsteps of Senator Hurtado, maybe being an ally too, and also mentors to other Valley students. So best wishes to you and your family, and thank you for taking the time, particularly to be part of this podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
And Senator Hurtado, it is nice to see you. You could be co-hosting this thing with me at this point. Look, thank you for bringing Isabella and all of your work on behalf of the Valley, and it is always great to have you here. You have a home here, and then there's California.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening in with all things regarding the Central Valley.
Thank you both so much for being with us. And that is a wrap of Then There's California. It's a production of the California State Senate Democratic Caucus, with technical assistance and production support from Martin Ashley, Bob Brulte, Brian Shadden, and Rainier Sabiniano, Gunchan Patel, McLeana Woods, Lisa Murphy, Ricardo Sins Ion, and the graphic artistry of Tim Davis. On behalf of State Senator Melissa Hurtado of the Central Valley, and maybe future State Senator Isabella Vasquez, a rising senior at San Joaquin Memorial High in Fresno, I'm Brian Green from the state capitol in Sacramento. Thanks for listening to Then There's California.